outstretched hand.
Hi there, this is Max from Belonging Education, and this is episode 5 of What is School Belonging? I was really excited to sit down and talk to a former colleague of mine, Bryon Harris, who's a veteran educator, community organizer, and the director of climate and safety for Evanston Skokie School District 65. Throughout his career, he's been a fierce advocate for equity, whether managing family support systems, creating safe school environments, or co-founding grassroots mentorship programs like the Officer and Gentleman Academy. He's also one of the minds behind the Healing and Hustle initiative, an important conversation centered on how Black students can overcome educational barriers, break systemic cycles, and turn pain into purpose. I hope you enjoy our conversation exploring community belonging and school belonging and a lot of other things. I know I did. Thanks for watching. And please like, share, subscribe, email me, reach out, and enjoy.
So, Bryon, thank you so much for being here today. I've got to say, in my stint as a principal here in a town that we both have great love for, in all of its complicated ways, I have to say, in my time there, you were definitely a standout in understanding how to meet kids where they were, understanding how to meet families where they were, how to have compassion for children and families while still reminding them what school was supposed to be about. So I've been looking forward to talking to you, and it's been a while since we connected. So I'm hoping to get into your brain a little bit about how you think of communities and schools, especially when it comes to kind of righting the wrongs of schools, where schools have gone wrong. So first question, and take this wherever you want to go, is we'll start big, like what does community belonging do to you? Because I know you see the connection between schools and community. So what does community belonging mean to you? And how do you know when a community is getting close to achieving it?
So community belonging to me is when all people see themselves reflected within the community that they live in, right? So where, if I go downtown in any community, I want to see a store that speaks to me and not just to a certain population of people or a certain demographic of people, right? It's welcoming to everybody and it's inclusive to everybody. When I'm walking down the street, am I being followed by the police, right? Meaning, if I am being followed by the police, that gives me a sense of I don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, am I being welcomed when I go into stores? Am I being welcomed when I go into institutions? Those are the things that, for me, when I look at community belonging, that's community belonging to me, is where everybody is welcome in that area, in that space, no matter what community you're in. And that could be, I think we oftentimes think diversity as just on a cultural lens, through a cultural lens, but that also falls into socioeconomics, that also falls into gender, that falls into sexual orientation, like where everybody feels that in this space, this is where I can be and I'm comfortable being there because I'm welcomed by everybody that's here, even if they don't look like me, have what I have, and all of that.
On the part of town where I was principal, I might walk out and see a rainbow flag, signifying that certain people are welcome there. But I might get a call from that very address saying, hey, there's someone who doesn't belong walking down the street. That was very, very hard to negotiate in a leadership role, but also as someone who believes in community the way you do. So how can any one person from any background feel safe here if another person is expressly made to not belong? I'm sure you get some of those, my kid's not safe because this kid is next to them, or my kid can't be at that school because this other kid's behavior is wrecking them.
And background. I have lived in Ohio. I've lived in Jersey. Philly, Mississippi, and Georgia, and Evanston. And when I always tell people, when we look at things such as, I use racism as an example, when we look at that, and I look at the places I've lived, I would say that um, this community that we're speaking about probably has the most issues
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to race and really being truly inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a level of, we talk of the game, but to implement and act on the words that we speak um, sometimes is not equal the talk, right? And I think that's because sometimes people are not being honest with themselves. And so, it's hard when you're in those situations and in those spaces, but it's, I think that has to be done is when we see it, we have to call it. We have to name it. That's the only way things can change. And so, when you're navigating those spaces like that, with the example you use, it's putting it on the table. How does this behavior make that person feel welcome? Does this behavior align with the things that you say you value, which is, say, for instance, equity or
Mm-hmm.
equality for
Mm-hmm.
all? But I think we've gotten to a point where we don't want to put it out there because we don't want to offend. And so when you do that, then what ultimately happens is it gets swept under the rug. People go on about their day, and the behavior continues and it worsens and nothing gets better. I'm all for calling it out because I have to. And I have to speak as a Black man because at the age I'm at right now, I remember Miss Sadie Ruff
Mm-hmm.
once said to me a couple years ago, she said to me, she said, when I hit 50, I realized that I no longer needed to bite my tongue for anybody. I'm too old for that. And so when she said those words to me, it resonated because I was like, yeah, she pretty much what she was saying is I've earned the right to say what I got to say. I've lived this life, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think when it comes to those kind of behaviors, if we're seeing people act in that manner, then we have to call those people out. It has to be a collective effort to call that behavior out.
Yeah.
We can't pretend, no matter who that person is or who that family is, or we have to, because we say diversity a lot, right? But diversity is not just on the outward. Diversity is a thought process.
Mm.
So you can't say, yeah, I'm diverse or I love diversity, but you only love diversity when it benefits you to love diversity. There was a time in society where I think people had no problem speaking up and speaking out and fighting against. And I don't know what happened, but I think now people are very apprehensive about doing so now. Um, and so, people are going to love you until you speak, until you use your voice. And that's just what it is. Or until you say no. You know what I mean? That's just
Right.
that's how society operates and how society works.
Yeah.
When we're talking about this subject matter.
Yeah.
You're fine as long as your mouth is shut.
Yeah. I want to just real quick say Sadie Ruff, who passed away last year, she's writing a book on belonging. And she's one of my examples of people who just got it and put in the work to make it happen for kids. Just cut through the BS, just saw a pathway to help kids truly belong and held her colleagues to it, held their feet to the fire. She found a
Right.
way. I think in your work, and I'm glad to know that you've had experiences in other states too,
Mhm.
you know, explicitly talking about Black students because we have not arrived. What, from your perspective, are the primary barriers that should be stripped away? Like, if you had the magic wand, what would you say?
So, I mean, I probably would start at the fact that when you look at Black students and you look at Black culture dating back to Kemet, which people call Africa, you know, um, Black people as a whole are creative, innovative people. And our modern day school system has stripped that gift, that strength from our children, right? So when you look at other countries, some other countries focus in on what their kids' strengths are at age 12, 13. Like they're identifying what they want to do with their life at that age and focusing in on it like we do here, but we wait till college, if you can afford to go to college at
Mhm.
age 18, 19, and then we start focusing in on what you want to do, right? But all those kids prior to that age of 18, 19 have this strength, but they might have a strength that's not even taught in school. Great example. I knew a kid who could fix bikes. Love fixing bikes. He could repair them, take them apart, build them back, clean them up, the whole nine. But there was no class in sixth, seventh, eighth grade that focused on fixing bikes. In school, he was bored out of his mind. So when you're bored out of your mind, you tend to get into stuff because
Mhm.
this is not your focus. You know, his focus was at 3:30. I'm going to leave this building and then I'm going to go and fix a bike. His focus wasn't anything before 3:30 because it had nothing to do with what he was interested in.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I use the reference of going back to Kemet, Africa, um, and being innovative and creative because we are not tapping into the strengths of Black children. And because of that, a lot of kids, Black children, are bored when they are in school. That's
Mhm.
one piece of it. That's one piece. The other piece is there is a feeling of I don't belong in this space. This space is not geared towards me. When I enter into this classroom and something happens, 8 times, 7 times out of 10, I'm going to be the one that where the finger is going to be pointed at, right?
Mhm.
Whether that's on purpose or not on purpose. But that's usually what happens. And so there's also that feeling. And the community we're talking about right now, in me being raised in the community, and I think when I was in the 80s, gosh, I want to say Evanston probably was about 30%. Maybe don't quote me on this, but 30% Black. Now it's dropped down to like 13, or it was like high 20% Black, and now it's dropped down to 13%. So now you're in a classroom where you may be one or two or three max of only Black children in the whole space, in the whole class. When I was raised at Evanston, there were a lot more Black students in the classroom. But for me, it was, where do I fit in this? Right?
Mhm.
I'm bored. Where do I fit in this? I'm not learning what I'm interested in. I'm getting in trouble. So because I keep getting in trouble, and this teacher is looking at me, I'm going to give this teacher a hard time just because now, right?
Mhm.
Who
Mhm.
cares about school? That was my mentality at that point. When I moved down to Atlanta, I went to a high school that was all Black, and it was an eye-opening experience for me because everybody there that looked like me was being pushed and motivated by all of the educators in the building and staff members in the building to do more with less. And it was a motivating environment. It was, hey, this is where we have been as a people. And this is where you guys are going in this generation. And if you guys are lacking or slacking, we getting on you. Not because you're in trouble, because we want to see better for you. And those teachers looked like me. Those educators looked like me. And in some spaces, when we're talking about schools, um, some Black children may never have a Black teacher at all. They may only have one.
In 2026.
Right. And so what does that say? Like, yeah, we can still connect, but it's a completely different experience. My One of my
Mhm.
best teachers was a white woman. Our relationship was great, and that was me in elementary school. But from that point on, just in general, when I look at the connections I have with people or teachers or educators, there wasn't a lot of people that understood or could relate. And culturally speaking, and not until I became a senior, I think I only had one Black teacher in high school, maybe two. Um, but when I got to Atlanta, people looked like me, and it was a motivator. Right? I
Mhm.
don't want to let this person down because I know they got my back. I know they want to see more out of me because they've had the same relatable experiences in their life as a Black person. And then, you know, it's an antiquated system. So people evolve, people grow, structures, institutions grow. There's changes that are made. But when you look at education as a whole, it's the same setup
Mhm.
as 60, 70 years ago. Come in, sit here at this desk, look at this board, stand in this line, raise your hand to do this, raise your hand to do that, be quiet in the hall. Like that doesn't
Yeah,
fit.
it's politics right now. We're going to keep finding a way to bring the worst, most non-inclusive stuff back. It's one of the things I've been disappointed from afar about even COVID. Like we had a chance to turn schools on their heads and do the type of stuff you're talking about. Let kids do passion projects, let them do inquiry, let them do research, let them get out into the community, let them talk about what the strengths are of their home. And we went right back to the most boring sit and get lectures
Right.
done.
Right. And we came back like nothing had happened. And we just dropped it on kids like, hey, what was your experience at home like for being away a year and a half? And then for some kids, being at home is not a good thing. So, we don't know what families have food insecurities during this time. We don't know what kids were experiencing abuse during this time. We don't know what kids were experiencing, lights being shut out or things of that nature during this time. Like, you just drop them back in, and then we drop them back in with all the stuff that you're speaking about
Right.
on top, layered on top of everything else.
Right. And blame, and then when the headlines say kids are underperforming, we say you need to step it up. You're 2 years behind. It's your fault. We lost kids who disappeared too. I'm thinking about the kids who had to take journeys, true physical journeys to other places, and we still don't know where they ended up. They were on different family members, and we never got to hear their stories. To your point, I'm not trying to oversimplify, but I am thinking about someone who is watching this and is saying, well, maybe I'm a young teacher, maybe I'm a new teacher, maybe I had my awakening. What would you say are sort of everyday practices or strategies that could start to shift things on a day-to-day basis for students who haven't felt a strong sense of belonging?
I think it's very simple. I tell people this all the time. It starts with a hello. Acknowledge me coming through your door. Acknowledge me coming in your building. If I walk in your building, and this happens to me as a Black man, as a professional, if I walk through your building and you don't even speak to me, then my mind goes somewhere else with it, right? Now, why not? I just smiled at you. I just spoke to you and you didn't say a word to me. Kids experience that. And Black kids experience that on a daily basis. Like you don't see me until I'm in trouble. Then that's when you see me and notice me. Um, and I think it starts with hello. It starts with how are you doing? How are you feeling today? What did you do last night? It starts with that relationship building. Everything is going to really focus on get to know your students. I feel like a lot of times people are more comfortable getting to know those students who they deem easier to get to know, the ones who are not the problem kids, and that's who they gravitate to. But I think as a young educator or as a young professional working with Black children or Black students, the thing is you got to get to know those students who are struggling. Those are the ones you really need to focus in on. Because those students, and I'll speak as a person who was that kid, those students are going to make or break your day. And they're going to make or break your week. But that's because for those children or those students that are in the classroom, if they know that you don't see them or that you're ignoring them, then they're going to do what they can to get your attention, or they're going to do what they can to get their classmates' attention. It goes back to that welcoming piece. You got to create that space of belonging. Hey, what's your interest? What do you like? Oh, you like Drake, you know. You know what? I'm gonna put a poster of Drake on my wall in my classroom, because I know that's what you're interested in. And so I'm gonna have conversations with you in regards to this because I need to understand who is this person? What does this person talk about? Let's dive into it. I have to get to know you. And it's not And it's not coming down to a level. What it is we're meeting each other halfway. Because I'm an adult taking time to get to know you as a child does not mean I'm lessening myself. It means that we're human beings, regardless of our age, we're human beings. I have some life experience and now I got to share it with you, but I want to work with you because ultimately I got a goal for you when you're in my classroom. So
Yeah.
just making them feel welcome.
Yeah. I'm thinking too about your examples like the bicycle and Drake. Like, the, I, there is not one thing that a kid likes that can't become a whole unit of study, right? Like bicycles. Oh my gosh, the history of bicycles, how bicycles work in other countries, and like you said, it can be a sign on the wall too. It doesn't have to be I'm going to throw all my other curriculum out, but just to connect to kids. And then Drake, Canada, Black and Jewish, business. Like there's so many different things you could do. Lyrics. I mean, study the lyrics, but also those things. Bicycling, Drake, tinkering, whatever. Those are the things that get kids in trouble. To your point, we see too many examples where we're so far away from tapping into what kids know, and instead we weaponize those things. We get them in trouble.
Yes. Yep. And Richard Pryor, I don't know if you know the story of Richard Pryor, how he got into comedy, but he used to crack jokes in the classroom all the time. And one day the teacher was like, you're disturbing, you're disrupting the classroom. She used to tell him all the time. The teacher had him come on up to the front of the class and she's like, I'm gonna give you 15 minutes to tell your jokes. That was his strength.
Right.
But instead of making it a negative, she took time to pour water and nurture that gift he had, even though it was disruptive in the class and she was calling out, she was like, look, this is what you obviously want to do today. So I'm gonna let you do it. And that's how it's like, you know what? I'm good at this, right? At a young age. And like you said, we can't weaponize the strength. And I think sometimes we see these things as negatives. If I have a kid who wants to argue back and forth with me, you know what? You should be a lawyer one day. Let me teach you. Let me educate you on what that looks like and what different kinds of lawyers there are in this country or in this world or whatever. Let's have these conversations. Matter of fact, meet me after class 5 minutes. I'm going to give you some information. Instead of, well, you're arguing with me, you're going back and forth. It's like we look at things from a authoritarian perspective, and we look to diminish a Black child's voice.
Yeah.
And sometimes what happens is it's because I'm uncomfortable with you having a voice when you're not supposed to have a voice. You're not supposed to challenge me, And there's a difference. And I've seen the difference with a Black child argues and their counterpart argues. There's a difference in terms of how people respond to that.
Yeah. And it's aggressive. I know you overlap security and the SEL side, but someone very close to me, I'll just say, had 5 security guards on them at the high school for what I would call self-advocating. And that is the language people who look like me stand up in front of kids and use, right? Like all the opportunities are here for you. You just need to self-advocate. But then if specifically as a Black child self-advocates in a way that isn't familiar to me or offends my sensibility somehow, then the swoop back is so aggressive, so traumatizing, and we don't like to acknowledge that, especially in a place where we say we're elite.
Yeah, and I even see it as a professional and I relate it back to children. So a Black child will advocate for themselves or speak up, and they're said to have an attitude, to be defiant, argumentative, disrespectful, these labels. And I see it as a professional where, as a Black man, I'll speak up and I'll say same thing. And the term that would be said about me or other Black males will be has an attitude, seems upset and angry, very defensive or arrogant. And it's those terms or that feeling that just doesn't end at being a Black child. It just it just streamlines and transfers to black males, right?
Yeah.
But it's that thought process of who black students are, or almost black people are as a whole.
Yeah.
We just can't do the same things or say the same things how other people say it, because then it's deemed as a negative.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the place where I was, because of the skin I walked in, the teachers like they gave me a year, right? They're like, okay, we'll try this for a year, and then they didn't like it anymore. But
Mhm,
that benefit of the doubt from the white teacher specifically, he's one of ours. He can get away with it versus some of the trouble they gave. At least the person who came before me,
mhm,
I think it was a month or two, and they were all of those words you used and more were being thrown at her
mhm.
for what she was trying to do. So talk about how shifting a student's mindset from being to actual belonging. How have you seen that really change kids' trajectories?
So when a child feels like this is my place, this is my space, this is where I fit, this is where I belong, um, they can take off when they have all the supports. And when I say supports, support is not a negative word. When I say supports, I mean the adults that actually care. And it's not a factory, meaning let's get them in and get them out. When you lean into a child knows, right? What does Maya Angelou say? Um, People don't remember what you did for them. They remember how you treated them, or something to that effect, or something like
How you
that.
made them feel? Yeah.
Yeah, how you made them feel. And so, that's a takeaway, right? For when you are leaning into and giving of yourself time wise, or just conversation, or really compassionate about educating them, or whatever it may be, then there's a return. It's an investment. You're investing into a life, a young life. And there's a return on investment, because they'll say, oh, this person cares for me. This person wants to see me do better. This person's going to hold me accountable.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with holding me accountable. I'm willing to listen because we have a relationship, you know? And once that happens, you know, they always say sky's the limit, but there is no limit, right? They just take off. I was one of those kids where once I had somebody lean into me in school, I was like, oh, she did say I was smart. I've never heard that before. It took me 18 years to actually hear that. Oh, okay. All right. So this person must be trustworthy, right? They're not out to get me. They're not out to hurt me. And I don't want to disappoint them. So let me go on and do what I need to do, and let me go on and show my gratitude by doing the right thing. Um, and so that's usually what happens. Kids don't want to let people down. People, I think, because, kids they're trying to please adults. They want adults to be proud. They want the praise. They want to be seen. They want to be heard, but they want to be recognized for the positives. And when we don't recognize the positives, it's like you, you're not pouring water on the plant. And when you don't pour water on the plant, it dies. And so a kid's spirit is the same way. If you don't nurture that relationship, cultivate, then that child's will and that child's passion for learning in your specific classroom, it's going to die. It's going to dwindle and die. But
Hmm.
once you pour into that child and you nurture that and you put time into that, that kid takes off in that environment. And that effort may spill over into the next environment, and so on and so forth.
I love that. There was just an Instagram post was about where trauma-based care, trauma-informed teaching has gone wrong. And it was I'm thinking of the metaphor you're using with gardening. It was because schools too often are the site of the trauma, but how easy it would be to shift. So if I'm trying to pour water on
Mhm.
a student, but I'm missing every single time, that shift is so easy. Just get to the place of acknowledgement first, and then look at all of the growth. I think that's great. Talk about your event on Saturday here in Evanston.
Yeah, man. So something definitely looking forward to doing this. Three other brothers from the town. Um,
Mr. Harris,
yeah,
Dr.
yeah,
Harris.
yeah. I don't know if he's a doctor. Yeah, but he's almost there, I believe. Yeah, he's almost there. So yeah, Adrian Harris, myself, Nathan Norman, and Spud Massey, Orlando. And so we're all from the town and we've all experienced some significant things in our lives. Um, and so I would say for the four of us, there were all times where people said we couldn't or we shouldn't. There were times where people didn't believe in us. And then there were times where we had some people or a couple people in our lives that did believe in us, and how that kind of kept pushing us and moving us along. It's really focusing on the struggles and the traumas that we may have experienced and how we showed up in schools, right? Because of the stuff that we were experiencing, whether the trauma was related to school or whether the trauma was related to outside of school. Um, and so how we showed up in the classroom space and how that affected us academically, our attendance, our behavior, our relationships with the other adults, with the adults in the building, our lack of motivation during that time frame, but what ultimately ended up motivating us to succeed, and just our struggles as Black children, Black students in the educational space. So, you really want anybody and everybody to come on out, even people to bring if they have Black children, bring their children on out so they can hear as well, because our children are experiencing some things, and I think it's always good to hear for them to see that, hey, this person has experienced some similar things you're going through right now as a child, but this is how they overcame those things, right? Ultimately, I really want to be used as that person that kids can tap into to say, hey, look, this is what I'm experiencing.
Mhm.
How can I move through this? How can I move past this? These are the barriers that I'm experiencing in school. These are some of the things that I've dealt with in life in general. So we're going to talk about all of that, but just the experience as a Black child, Black student in Evanston and what that was like.
Awesome. I appreciate all this.
If people just come on out on Saturday at 11:30 over at Christ Temple. It's not. This is not a religious event. I know sometimes people see churches and get frightened, but this is not a religious event. But we definitely thank Pastor Cherry and Deacon Weatherspoon for allowing us to use the venue, but to use the space. But yeah, this is something that's going to be impactful, and
Yeah, it
hopefully
looks
something
great.
that people take away some stuff from. So yeah, it'd be good.
Great, great, great. Great to reconnect. Thanks for all you're doing. I know you are very respected all over town. The work you're doing
That
is seen and noticed and recognized. So,
That's good to
uh,
hear. Thanks, man. Thank you.
yeah,
I
yeah.
always hear the negative, so thank you.
No, no, no. And as when I was a principal, it was like, I know someone who, if we have to call in for collaboration, will get it. Protect this child and have the hard conversations. Like, we need to be able to do both. So that is seen around town. So thanks for hanging in there and for doing all you do.
An outstretched hand, smiling eyes, comfort humming through the halls, tracing lines I used to hide, found a lock that turned inside. It's more than just